Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We start our video with a short but intense story filled with crazy ideas that our OP's brother promoted. I don't think you've heard anything like this. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. When my kids turn 15, they will be your responsibilities. Growing up, my brother was given a lot more attention and resources than me because my parents believed that as the firstborn son, he was meant to do big things. Long story short, he made them go bankrupt to pay for his lifestyle and then went bankrupt himself. While I worked very hard to be where I am today in a different country, which has a better education system, but college is very expensive. He got a girl pregnant, and they had a daughter who's a year old. He announced to the family that when his daughter and future kids turned 15, he would send them to me, and I would be 100% responsible for them until they finish college, because I have no money and no kids. This was after they physically, mentally, and financially abused me for years. I told them that I only rescue cats. My husband and I are cat people. They thought I was joking. I guess when the kid's 15, they'll realize I meant exactly what I said. Don't be surprised if the kid shows up at your door when it turns 15 because you're family. And our second story. My mom stole my inheritance and kicked me out of the family when I asked her to pay it back. Backstory. My mom's had a really hard life. She didn't have an active father, and no one on her mom's side wanted to take her in, so she went into foster care for a few years. Not good experience from what she told me. At age 8, she was adopted into a loving, wealthy family of 2 college professors, along with an adopted brother. She had a hard time adjusting, made a lot of bad decisions, and basically ran away in her late teens. This whole time, her adopted parents were doing everything they could to reach out to their daughter and help her get on her feet, but mostly their efforts were wasted. She has a child at 18 and again a few years later. She lost them to foster care and then had me with a different man. Eventually, she gets her first 2 kids back, my older half-brothers, has me, marries twice again, and has 2 more kids, my 2 younger brothers. In total, she has 5 children, 4 boys, with me, the middle girl. We grow up very poor, with our mother always gone or bringing back strangers to party, leaving me to raise the youngest 2. We would visit our grandparents, mom's adopted parents, for holidays and special occasions, but with my mother's strained relationship with them, we weren't able to visit as much as we kids would like. My childhood was crappy, to say the least. That being said, I loved my grandparents, especially my grandpa, dearly, and they loved us kids back. And as much as they struggled with my mom, they were nothing but loving towards her from what I understand. The thing about my grandparents is the education was very important to them. I remember the encouragement for college started very early on from them, and they made it very clear I was expected to go to college. Fast forward to 2005. I'm in 5th grade and my grandma passed away. My mom has a wake-up call and gets sober, but is still absent from AA meetings and general disinterest. Then in 7th grade, my grandpa passed as well. This crushed me. I wasn't able to articulate any of it at the time, but that's when the big-time depression rolled in. From there on, school was very difficult for me, as well as my home life. I ended up falling pretty deep into my sorrow and stopped going to school around my junior year of high school. After a breakthrough, I decided I had to get the hell away from that house and ultimately moved out at the age of 17 to a bigger city about 45 minutes away. I barely finished high school with a 1.75 GPA, and somehow 2 teachers from the new school convinced me to sign up for the community college. They helped me fill out my FAFSA and everything. Side note, when I received my mom's financial info for that year for the FAFSA, she claimed to make around $10K a year. That's how poor we were. After my first semester in college, I was hooked. Science was actually pretty cool. I realized I loved to learn and kept pushing through. I worked full-time, busted my butt, and after 4 years, I finally achieved an associate degree. But that wasn't enough for me. I was able to transfer over to a university that I would have never been able to attend right out of high school due to grades and whatnot, and finish my BS in my favorite field of science. In total, it took me 6 years to get my BS degree, but I worked so freaking hard and I was so proud of what I was able to accomplish. Keep in mind, during my whole college career, my mother was characteristically absent and dismissive of what I was doing. When I was in my early 20s, still at community college, she packed up her and my baby brothers and moved 5 hours up north. I didn't have a car and couldn't come see them hardly at all. I was upset by this, of course, but that didn't matter to her. She eventually moved back a couple years later. Anyway, I graduate college with $40,000 college debt. Not so bad compared to most, I always thought. I knew that I'd have to work hard and accrue debt to get where I wanted in life, so this was a necessary burden and I've accepted that. However, things have turned in recent events. In my effort to get closer to my late grandparents, I reached out to their close personal friends, let's call them the Johnsons, to get a better idea of what my grandparents were like. They were so close that the Johnsons were actually the arbiter of my grandpa's will. In conversations, it came out that when my grandparents passed away, they left a $150,000 inheritance for the grandchildren's education. However, 3 years later, around 2010, my mother came to the Johnsons and confessed to them that she blew all the education money. On what? I have no freaking idea, but I do remember her buying a 2-door sports car, our only car for a 6-person family, after Grandpa died, so I'm sure the rest of her purchases were great investments. This was really upsetting to me for many reasons. I was the only grandchild that actually went to college, and that money could have easily covered my expenses. If I had that money, I wouldn't have had to spend every moment for 6 years busting my butt. I could have afforded to only have 1 job instead of 3. I could have spent that time studying and getting better grades or done an internship, which literally makes or breaks your career in my field. I wasn't able to do any of that and haven't been able to get a related job. Not the worst thing, but unfortunate. I have a fine job in tech that I wouldn't have been able to get without my degree. Plenty happy with my decision. My relationship with her was already strained, but this really crossed a line for me. I emailed her telling her I knew what she did and she needed to pay me back. That's probably not going to happen. She owns a small business and social media, but it doesn't do that great. I kind of want to just cut ties forever, but I'm so angry. So let's see what she has to say in court, because I've decided to get some of the money back, although it's very unlikely, but it's worth a try. And our final story.
Don't crap on your own doorstep. So I live on a little street with about 7 houses. We're the only student housing in the area, so we're often a target for people looking to make quick money by blaming us because they think it's easy to get us into trouble. This lady thought wrong. The cast is DB, our neighbor, aka Dumb B, TB, my housemate, a genuine teddy bear, CW is council worker, and me is many earthworms. So I'm walking back from university when I'm accosted by a middle-aged woman in her dressing gown and slippers. Hey, you! I stop because I'm trying to be polite to the neighbors. The locals have a location hate students group who vandalize student property and try to make us leave, so I tend to overcompensate to make our household look good. Hi, how are you? You vandalized my car! Are you seeing the irony here? I cross the road to where DB is standing and where her car is parked and say, "Pardon?" "You dumb B, did you not hear me? I said you vandalized my car." I knew she was really trying to say that I vandalized her car when I was on the other side of the road, and she knew that. "I'm sorry, I think you've got the wrong person." She points at a huge scrape down the side of her car, and I wince. That poor thing must have been beaten up pretty badly. But I had nothing on me that I could have inflicted that kind of damage with. I explained that the Benman destroyed my moped, still in for repairs, so they might have caught her car too, and her eyes lit up. "A moped? So you're the little C-word who parks on my driveway." Our house has a driveway big enough for 4 cars and is obviously right outside my house. So I tell her, no, I've not been parking on her drive, especially because my bike was destroyed and has been gone for over 2 weeks. "You're a liar!" She's like spitting in my face at this point. "I have photos of your bike blocking my driveway from 3 days ago. That's why I was parked in the road, and that's why my car got totaled." "Okay," I nod. "May I see the photos?" She's all too happy to whip out her phone and show me the photos of what she proudly believes to be my moped. A fire engine red piece of scrap that, to be honest, was well beyond saving even before the Ben men mangled her. except it isn't my bike. Ma'am, I hate to be rude, but that's a mobility scooter. Cue the screaming and shouting about rude teenagers, I'm like 21, and how we university students always disrespect the locals. She tells me that I must think she's an idiot. I do, for thinking that she's wrong about my bike. She was. So I take a deep breath and say, "Ma'am, I'm in a rush. But you really are wrong about the bike. Maybe ask the next door neighbor, a kind old lady who owns that mobility scooter but is a little forgetful about why she parks her scooter on your drive." I walk away and think nothing of it. Except now she's left her totaled car on our private property instead of her own drive after running our fence that blocks the drive down and complaining to our landlady about antisocial behavior. There isn't any, by the way. We are 4 reclusive students who stay in all night watching Netflix with our headphones in, and she's also like 5 houses down from us, so she definitely wouldn't be able to hear the noise she was describing. Pretty much the whole neighborhood is shunning us at this point, as DB has been spreading lies about our behavior, telling everyone we vandalized her property. So it's only fair that she uses our driveway as compensation. I feel responsible for her behavior, as I should have shut her down immediately rather than letting this drag out. So I sit in my room, nothing new there, and hatch a plan. The next morning, I walk past her house and watch as DB lets her dog out. Watch it take a crap on the public pavement, then walk past and walk away. Bingo. According to our local council, this is an offense she can get fined for, as it's vandalism and obstruction of council property. So every morning as I walk to my train, I take a photo of the turds. Some fresh, some crusty, some smeared across the pavement by some poor sod who stood in it. Then I email everything to my local counselor, who's fuming that someone fully able-bodied is allowing their dog to do this without cleaning it up. She gets fined £1,000 with the threat of more if she continues to do so. I heard this from my neighbor, as she was friends with CW, who handled the case. And guess what? She did. And the more that dog pooped, the more I reported it. She racked up £4,000 in fines just for dog crap alone, and I didn't even report her for trespassing on private property. But apparently she'd spoken to CW, who was a newbie, and pressured him until he let slip that a neighbor had reported it, and she, of course, happened to, 1, realize it was me, and 2, know where I effing live. She hammered on my door, screaming about how she was going to drown my cat. I don't have one. My neighbor's cat loves me, though. Smash my window, then catch me when I was walking home. Now, TB is also a recluse. I've said in previous posts that he basically stays in his room and only leaves to go to uni or grab a beer and some food. But he is PO'd at the way this lady is screaming at me. He stomps downstairs, opens the door. While she's mid-scream, he glares down at her. He's 6'7" and a rugby player, so he's basically a walking muscle. If I didn't know that he liked to cry at anime while hugging us on the sofa, I'd think he was terrifying. But this lady wasn't privy to that information. So she looks up at this angry, massive northerner and just trembles as he says in a very low, threatening voice, "You need to get off our property and take your dog. If you so much as blink at rightly snitch, and I hear about it, I'll not only call the council for the dog crap you flung on our driveway, but I'll call the police for the damage to property and harassment. Now F off, lady." Safe to say, she ran faster than I've ever seen her run. Last week I heard from the neighbor that CW had sold her car for scrap. She never got the thing fixed, just to pay the eventual £4,200 in fines she'd racked up. And every time I walk to the train station and see that mobility scooter parked on her drive, it feels like another little win.
Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.